I will call to order the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for May 2021. To introduce the staff to you, let's see, I don't see Dave here tonight.
No, Dave.
No? Okay. On my left over here is Ken Prince, our city planner. On my right is Carrie Myers, administrative planner, Derek Spear, senior planner, and Krista Hill, associate planner. Carrie, would you call the roll?
Charles Kruger?
Here.
Chris Torty?
Here.
Marcia Wells?
Here.
Joel Dendu?
Here.
Larry Stilson?
Here.
Okay, thank you. We have some rules and regulations tonight since we are partly virtual and partly in attendance. So if you'll give me just a minute, I'll let you know how we're going to try and do this evening. We have some special procedures that we're going to follow. If you have called or logged in virtually, we do need to have you mute your phone or device. There are multiple items for the meeting. Before the start of the meeting, I'll read the agenda so that those online understand the order of when their specific item will be heard. For each public hearing item, I will ask for the petitioner to present. If the petitioner is here in the building, they will come to the podium, state their name and address for the record, and make their presentation. If the petitioner is attending virtually, they should unmute their phone at the time of their presentation and then remute following the presentation. Whenever anyone chooses to speak, you must state your name clearly before speaking. This means everyone, including the board, staff, and the public. If you've already stated your address or you are a member of the board or staff, you don't need to state your address again. I will then ask for those in favor to speak on the item. I will first ask those attending the building to come and speak, and once they have spoken, I will ask those attending virtually to speak. At that time, again, unmute your device and ask to be heard by stating your name. Since there's a possibility that multiple people may try to speak at one time, please be patient, let others go first, and I'll always ask multiple times and pause between items to make sure everyone has a chance. I will then ask for those in opposition to speak on the item. I will first ask those attending in the building to come and speak, and once they are finished, I'll ask those attending virtually to speak. Again, at that time, unmute your device, ask to be heard by stating your name. And since there is a possibility that multiple people may try to speak at one time, again, please be patient and let others go first. I'll always ask multiple times and give everyone a chance. Following those speaking against, I will ask the petitioner if they would like rebuttal time to answer questions or address concerns that have been presented. Once the rebuttal is complete, I will close the public hearing on that item, and the board will ask questions and then vote. During this process, the public is not allowed to participate unless called on. So if you're attending virtually, make sure your devices are muted. Each vote will be done by roll call vote. Since the board member's name will be read prior to voting, you don't need to state your name when voting. At the end of each item, I will identify the vote and whether the item passed or failed. I will then call for the next hearing item by reading it off the agenda. It may take a minute or two to stage between meetings, since groups may be called in from the hallway or other parts of the building. So thank you for your assistance and your patience. The agenda for this evening will be as follows. First is 1803 Lincoln Way West. Next is 1333 and 1335 Lincoln Way East. The next appeal is 402 Studebaker Street, followed by 5758 Grape Road. Next is 1619 Elder Road, 606 Brown Avenue, and finally 2777 Lincoln Way East. Up on the board, you will see the explanation of rules and procedures for tonight. The appellate will first come forward and present their appeal. Those wishing to speak in favor of the appeal will have an opportunity. Those wishing to speak in opposition will have their chance. The appellate will have the right to rebuttal. We'll have questions from the board. I will close the public hearing. We'll have board discussion, staff discussion, a motion, and then a vote. The April 2021 meeting minutes, are there any corrections or any discussion or changes on those?
No.
Nope.
Okay. All in favor of those minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. And is there a conflict of interest on the board?
No.
Nope.
Okay. We will move along to the first public hearing, Appeal 21-05. An appeal submitted by Morgan E. Mick requesting a developmental variance for 1803 Lincoln Way West to allow a new home with a 20-foot front yard setback and a 10-foot exterior side yard setback. This is being continued from the April meeting. Is there, okay, sure, come on up. Give us your name and address, please.
I'm Morgan Mick. I live at 515 Edgewater Drive in Mishawaka.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about what you're asking for?
We're asking for a 20-foot variance as opposed to the 25-foot variance.
And this is a new home, is this
Yes.
correct? Okay. And I understand there are two setbacks that we're talking about here?
Yes, it's
Mr.
not
Prince?
just the front, it's also the exterior side. They're looking for a reduction from 12 and a half feet to 10 feet.
Oh, okay. All right. Are there any questions?
Our only real reason for that is so that it lines up better with the rest of the houses that come along the street and it sits on the curb.
Okay.
So,
And Carrie's going to need your name and address.
no, I'm sorry. Andrew Mick, 515 Edward. They're very familiar with me.
Sorry, Andy, I had to ask.
Andrew.
Yes, I get it. Okay. Thank you.
Great,
Appreciate
thanks.
it. Is there anyone here in the room who would like to speak in favor of the appeal? Anyone attending virtually who'd like to speak in favor of the appeal? Okay. Anyone to speak in opposition here in the room? Anyone attending virtually to speak in opposition? All right, that's a good sign. Questions? Anything from the board?
No.
Mr. Prince, anything?
No.
All right. I will close the public hearing on Appeal 2105 and entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I would like to motion to approve Appeal 21-05.
Second?
Okay, Carrie, would you poll the board, please?
Charles Kruger,
Yes.
Chris Torty.
Yes.
Marcia Wells,
Yes.
Larry Stilson,
Yes.
Joel Dendu.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. That appeal passes 5-0. Appeal 21-06. Is that
Madam
been
Chair,
withdrawn?
they have requested withdrawal. They have worked with staff and our concerns, and they now meet the parking requirement
Okay.
for it. So
Okay, very good.
you will need a motion to accept the withdrawal.
Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the withdrawal of Appeal 21-06?
So moved. Second?
Carrie, would you poll the board, please?
Charles Kruger,
Yes.
Chris Torty,
Yes.
Marcia Wells,
Yes.
Larry Stilson.
Yes.
Joel Dendu.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It passes 5-0. We will move on to Appeal 20, I'm sorry. It's supposed to be 21, isn't it?
Yeah, 21.
21-08, an appeal submitted by Isabella Hess requesting a developmental variance for 402 Studebaker Street to allow a 6-foot privacy fence with a 0-foot exterior side yard setback. If you would state your name and address for us, please.
Isabella Hess, 402 Studebaker.
Okay, and can you tell us what you're requesting?
I would like to put up a 6-foot privacy fence where the current one is already at. The fence that's there now is only about a 4.5, maybe 5-foot fence. I have 3 giant dogs that are bigger than I am. Last year, we unfortunately had a situation happen where a neighbor thought that it was okay to stick their hand over the fence, which is obviously a big no-no for anybody who knows dogs. So the dogs reacted. And so to protect my neighbors, myself, and everybody else involved in the situation or prior or, coming up issues that may occur if we don't do this. It's just more important for the safety of my family and the public around us.
Sure. So you're replacing the fence that's there, you're not adding it anymore?
No.
Okay.
It's going to be exactly the way that it is now, just taller.
Okay.
And I understand that since we have an alley and because of where our driveway is, that we'll have to put notches in so that way we can see people coming,
Right.
can see, and then I can see getting out.
Right.
So that obviously I was okay with when that was brought into my attention too, because I didn't think about that at first, but
Okay,
that doesn't bother me any. It's just that I don't want to lose a whole bunch of yard, because if I was to follow with the ordinance for the privacy fence, it would go all the way up to where my garage is at. So I'd be losing most of my yard.
Madam Chair, I would also note that we've requested that the setback be 4 feet from the sidewalk. Right now, the existing fence appears to be about 2 feet, and it looks like it's offset, almost, it's in the right-of-way. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
apparent, so we've asked
Sure.
it to come back, and that's why the corner cut is limited to 10 feet, not greater than that. If fence can go back a couple feet, it saves a little bit of room in the corner,
oh,
too.
okay,
So,
okay. And that's okay with you, you understand that, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the room wishing to speak in favor of this appeal? Anyone attending virtually who'd like to speak in favor of the appeal? Anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone attending virtually who'd like to speak in opposition? Okay, are there questions from the board? Anybody? No? Okay, I'll close the public hearing on Appeal 21-08 and entertain a motion.
I move that the board approves Appeal 2108.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Carrie, would you poll the board?
Charles Kruger,
Yes.
Chris Torty,
Yes.
Marcia Wells,
Yes,
Larry Stilson,
Yes.
Joel Dendu.
Yes.
that appeal passes 5-0. Thank you. Next is Appeal 21-09, an appeal submitted by 5758 Grape Road LLC, requesting a sign variance for 5758 Grape Road to allow a sign installed on a canopy. Hello.
Hello.
Fine to get your chance, huh? Go right ahead. If you'd state your name and address for us.
Sure, Charlie Shaliel, Site Enhancement Services, 6001 NIMS Parkway, South Bend, Indiana. First, thanks for allowing us to come before you this evening. Here today to speak to the pickup letters that you see on the overhead projector. The letter set, excuse me, 18-inch tall letters to reflect the new aspect of the business, thanks to the good old COVID situation that we have. You can order your food, you can maintain the distance by staying in your car and just actually drive right up to the window to get it. There's no drive-through lane per se where you place your order. It's just drive up to the window and pick up the food and take it home. We're looking at 11.76 square feet mounted to the face of that or actually to the top, in line flush with the face of the canopy, similar to what other businesses have in the area. As the staff referred to it, the home of the Whopper sign. It's similar in nature, but just the way the code's written, considered a roof sign. But as you can see, it's not projecting over any roof line. It's just on the canopy feature itself. doesn't put us above square footage. It's just I guess, a communication issue with the way that the code interprets this level of sign. We do respectfully request your approval. Thank you so much. If you have any
Okay.
questions.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of this appeal? Anyone attending virtually who'd like to speak in favor? Anyone here who'd like to speak in opposition? Anyone attending virtually who'd like to speak in opposition? Okay, are there questions? No. Okay, thank you very much. I will close the public hearing on Appeal 21-09. Is there a motion?
I move to approve Appeal 21-09 as written.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Carrie?
Charles Kruger,
Yes.
Chris Torty,
Yes.
Marcia Wells,
Yes?
Larry Stilson,
Yes.
Joel Dendu.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. That appeal passes 5-0. Thank you. Next is Appeal 21-10, an appeal submitted by Richard Derek Pestow, sorry if I messed that up, Wesley Cole Pestow, Colin Wade Pestow, and George A. Pestow, requesting a developmental variance for 1619 Elder Road for a 30 by 48, 18-foot tall accessory structure with gravel drive behind the house. Is there someone attending virtually who would like to speak in favor of this appeal? Wesley, are you there?
Yeah. Yeah, this is Wesley Pesto, 1619 Elder Road, Mishawaka.
Okay, and would you like to tell us what you'd like to do?
Yes, I would love to put up the structure that I have. I ended up receiving it for nothing more than just pulling it down and bringing it back to my house. We have a lot of different vehicles and tools and other things that we need to have storage for, and this would definitely take care of all those issues that we're having right now. Hello?
Yep.
And what kind of things are you going to put in this? Is this for vehicles and?
We
that
have,
kind of-
we have like 3 different vehicles that need to go in there. My dad's got a 1966 Chevelle. It's just sitting outside right now and under a tarp, and it needs a good place to be stored. I mean, that's a classic car, and it just needs to be taken care of better.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pesto, I have a question. This is Chris Torty. The engineering department had the following comments: driveway shall be a paved, hard surface, and they don't really support gravel, so are you in agreement to that?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with having the drive paved or anything. I just would hope to be able to do it after we get the concrete pad and everything else poured. That way it doesn't get tore up while it's being constructed and all that.
Does
Thank
that
you.
make it,
I don't.
does that make a difference on our?
I'm sorry. What?
No, so the idea would be that before they occupy the building, that the paving would be in place.
Okay.
The other thing noted is I believe the engineering signed off on it just being paved to the, like behind the house, and that between the house and the accessory building could be gravel. The whole purpose of the ordinance is to prevent erosion and to keep the gravel off the roadway. So by paving it up past the house, it should accomplish that, and then they can use the gravel from there back to get to the accessory building.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see. All right, thank you, Wesley. If you'll hold on for just a minute. Is there anyone here in the room who would like to speak in favor of this appeal? Anyone attending virtually who'd like to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in opposition of the appeal? Anyone attending virtually who'd like to speak in opposition? Okay, are there any more questions, comments from the board?
Nope.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing on that appeal and take a motion.
I move that we approve Appeal 21-10.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve Appeal 21-10. Carrie?
Charles Kruger,
Yes.
Chris Torty,
Yes.
Marcia Wells,
Yes.
Larry Stilson,
Yes.
Joel Dender.
Yes.
Thank you all. That appeal passes 5-0. Thank you, Wesley. We appreciate you being with us tonight. We will move on to Appeal 21-11, an appeal submitted by Hacc Properties LLC requesting a developmental variance for 606 Brown Avenue to allow a 5-foot 6-inch exterior side yard setback for a new home.
Hello, Terry Lang from Lang, Feeney and Associates. Our address is 715 South Michigan Street in South Bend. I represent the petitioner, Hacc Properties. The petition before you is to allow for a new home to be built on the corner lot. The variance that we're asking for is down to the 5.5 foot. At that location, Forest Avenue, adjacent to the property there, is a 60-foot right-of-way. Pavement itself is only 28 foot, so there's an extra 16 foot of space between the back of the curb and the property line. So we'll actually have about 21.5 feet between the back of the curb and the actual house. So that's the purpose of the petition before you. These lots were all platted, I think, over 50 or 60 years ago, and the width of them, we've got a builder that's interested in building. They've already started a couple of the foundations on some of the other lots located west of there, and we think it would be a nice asset for the community there.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lang. Is there anyone attending tonight who would like to speak in favor of this appeal? Yes, sir.
My name is Paul Johnson. I live at 626 West Brown Avenue. 26 years, I never had a neighbor. All been vacant. Up to the day that I woke up and came home and seen digging being done. I would like to see that done. I know what it's like to be in that neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood, real good. And what they're doing is an awesome job. I appreciate it. So I'm in favor of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Anyone attending virtually who'd like to speak in favor of the appeal? Anyone here wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone attending virtually who'd like to speak in opposition? Board, questions, comments?
None.
Nothing? Okay, Mr. Prince?
Nothing.
Okay. I will close the public hearing on Appeal 21-11 and take a motion.
I move that Appeal 21-11 be approved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve Appeal 21-11. Carrie?
Charles Kruger,
Yes.
Chris Torty,
Yes.
Marcia Wells,
Yes?
Larry Stilson,
Yes.
Joel Dender.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes 5-0. And you are about to have new neighbors, Mr. Johnson, so congratulations. That's great. Thank you, Mr. Feeney, or Mr. Lang. I appreciate it. And finally, Appeal 21-12, an appeal submitted by Pizza Hut of America, Inc., requesting a developmental variance for 2777 Lincoln Way East to allow a reduction in parking spaces and pavement setback along Mary Ellen Avenue. Is there someone attending virtually who'd like to speak to that?
Yes, good evening, Mike Huber, Abmarsh Consultants, 315 West Jefferson Boulevard in South Bend. Also on attending virtually is Rich Krumholtz, who is the developer of the potential new restaurant we're here for. Appreciate your consideration for our questions this evening. The property is the former Pizza Hut restaurant location on the south side of Lincoln Avenue East, just east of Capitol Avenue, between the McDonald's and Mary Ellen Drive. We have a pending request at 7 in front of the Plan Commission this evening to rezone the property from C1 to C7 to allow for the drive-through restaurant use. The C7 district has a requirement of 15 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of restaurant. This restaurant will be about 2,300 square feet, which would require 35 total parking spaces under the ordinance. Additionally, the presence of Mary Ellen Drive on the east side of the property as a public street requires a 10-foot parking pavement setback along the east edge of the pavement, and we're asking to vary that as well, given the narrow width of the site. We're looking for 2 variances this evening. We're hoping to vary. Our original request is to vary the parking required from 35 to 26, and to reduce the 10-foot required pavement setback to 6 feet to allow the development of the restaurant. As we were laying this out and designing this, because of the narrow width of the site, we had a number of challenges in trying to get this thing set out. I'll let you know the floor plan that's outlined here is the actual smallest floor plan of the franchise's offerings. So we've got the smallest offering, or the smallest option. We're looking at about 30 interior dining seats. So it's geared more towards the drive-through business, certainly, than the in-room dining, based on the small. And we knew we'd need a small one to fit the site profile as well. We do know in our request for the 10-foot pavement setback to 6, we are trying to still meet the city's required 6 feet planting area. And we anticipate landscaping that in a manner so that we will mitigate any impacts on traffic that would be coming up Mary Ellen Drive towards cars stacked in the drive-through lane. In looking at the parking spaces, we've done our best to accommodate the maximum number of spaces we could on the site. The most we could get is 26. After we laid this out, we received engineering's comments, and engineering responded that they would prefer to see this site either function with two-way traffic, which would require us to eliminate the parallel parking spaces on the west side of the site there, or they would like angle parking instead of the perpendicular in the back. Our original layout had angle parking in that area as well. Either option, we agree this isn't the ideal site layout, but this gets us to the parking spaces that we felt we would most likely need. Either option, going to a two-way traffic, which would be our preferred would be to go to two-way traffic and remove those parallel sites, or going to a one-way with angled. We're going to lose about 4 additional spaces. We just can't accommodate any more on here. So we would have to modify our request this evening to further reduce from 26 or to 20, from 35 to 26 to from 35 to 22. We know that we've in peak staffing hours, this restaurant will have 7 employees, so we'll have 7 employee spaces. At the reducing to 26, as this plan would show, that would give us an additional 19 public spaces. With the 30 seats, that's about 1.5 seats per space. If we need to go to 22 to meet what engineering is requiring us to do, that gives us 7 employee spaces and 15 public spaces, which would be 1 space for every 2 seats. which I think was outlined in the staff report, that would be the minimum they would want to see. So we would still be able to achieve 1 space per 2 seats, even at 22. Our preference would be to have 26 if we could. Engineering comments also asked us to take a look at contacting NDOT and maybe encroaching in the right of way and providing some additional spaces on the front. We would certainly anticipate being able to do that. There's no guarantees from NDOT that they would allow us to do that. So we couldn't count any of those spaces, but if they would allow us, we would certainly add some in that area as well. So those are our requests this evening. Again, we'd like to reduce that, the pavement setback on the east from 10 to 6 feet. And then if we want to accommodate engineering's request on the site plan layout and go to a 2-way traffic, we would need to get to 22 spaces. Our original proposal or request was to reduce to 26 spaces. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Mr. Prince?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Huber, I learned this evening that the request of engineering was adamant that the drive location be moved from Lincoln Way to Mary Ellen. Is that problematic for you moving forward?
I don't believe that'll be problematic moving forward. If that's an adamant request from engineering that we do that, we want to work with you guys to accommodate what you guys feel is best in terms of safety.
Great, thank you. The other item that I'd like the board to consider is because of the advertising requirements, we can't, I would like to give them direction as to whether we would support 22 spaces so they don't waste their time coming back. But the reality is because it was advertised and requested a certain way, to go further reduction than that will require them to reapply. So if that's the case, I'd like you to weigh in on if you would support 22 as part of your discussion or not, so they have that direction, and then act on the 26, so they at least have that moving forward of knowing they potentially could work toward that. It is our preference that it be 2-way as well, but they can make it work with the parallel spaces at 26, so they could make a decision on their own at that point of what they want to do, if they want to come back and apply for a further reduction or go ahead with the 26.
This is Chris Torty, Mr. Prince. What's your preference, to consider the 24?
Ours, as Mr. Spear pointed out in the staff report, is based on the very limited seating that they have in the building. We think the parking, I don't know if adequate is the right term. We'd like to see more, but we think it's sufficient given the nature of the site. Part of the challenge of this is to get anything on this property that's going to reasonably be used on it, and we feel it meets that minimum threshold. It's not ideal, but we feel like there is a hardship there, and that's the basis of the variance.
Well, then in that case, I think we should consider it.
I do.
The further reduction. Let's get something on that property.
As I'm looking at this, Larry Stilson, as I'm looking at this, you have the parallel parking, which you said you thought that you were, well, I mean, there in the back, the parking spaces, right. Now, you're going to have cars parked on either side of the drive, is that correct?
So where Mr. Spear's pointing is perpendicular?
Okay, perpendicular, excuse me.
Right, and then
All right.
the parallel ones we were talking about are adjacent to the building.
Okay.
Okay.
But the perpendicular, and you're going to have traffic going both ways down the middle of those perpendicular parking spaces, is that correct?
That is our preference.
Okay, and so you're going to have drive-through coming through those, down the middle of those spaces, and then you're going to have people backing out and pulling into those spaces at the same time as you have drive-through coming down the middle of them. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that's virtually the same as any drive-through restaurant that we have. I think the difference here is the narrow space that we have in terms of moving and jacking the traffic around.
That's part of my point, is that
Correct.
it looks like it's going to be awfully congested behind that restaurant as traffic is moving both ways, both parking and pulling out of parking places.
So we don't have an idea of what flow will be going through the drive-through, but when you look at the site plan, what we like about the two-way is people figure out these habits, and I don't know if the queue would come back and queue on Mary Ellen as opposed to queue through the lot. Part of it is when I frequent fast food, which isn't very often anymore, if I see a line, I don't go there. So that, I don't know how people will approach this, but the reality is, if I have trouble getting through, I think people will make conscious decisions not to further exacerbate that situation.
And next question is, why is there not, maybe I don't understand, but why is there not an entrance and exit at the side street, Mary Ellen there?
So that is the question I clarified with Mr. Huber at the beginning. Derek, if you could point to the area where we envision that the entrance will be. What engineering is requesting is that the current existing access on Lincoln Way be closed and that the access actually be moved to where Mr. Spear is pointing on the screen.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
I'd like to point out we do have a significantly extended drive-through lane that runs we utilize the length of the parcel, understanding that we had issues with the width, so that we would be able to minimize as much the concerns that were just raised regarding drive-through stacking that might happen in the parking area.
Okay.
Mr. Huber, this is Ken Prince. Can you identify the number of vehicles you can fit in that queue?
So it looks, we've got about 6 or 8 in there, and that's half of them up to the order board. So, then you've got we've got another room for another 4 to 6 more up getting the food. So 10 to 12 vehicles in the stacking lane.
Very good, thank you.
Mr. Huber, this is Chris Torty. I have a question. I know the name of the restaurant is undisclosed at this point, but is there an average queue time that they have for that proposed restaurant?
Sure. Since Rich Krumholtz, the developer, is on the line, he's probably better suited to answer that, because I'm sorry, he just texted me. He said it's 190 seconds. So just over 2 minutes.
Okay,
Or just over 3 minutes, sorry.
thank you.
This is Joel Dendu. Question for you. So Mr. Prince had talked about if he sees the line, he gets out of there. I feel like that's usually accomplished where there's room to the side of the drive-through queue in order to kind of circle around the restaurant, I guess. Is there going to be room for that here, or is it going to be too tight for that sort of situation?
So what we've done is there's an existing entrance midway, just past kind of the order board sign to Mary Ellen Drive there. And we've had some discussions with the city about allowing us to utilize that potentially as a bailout opportunity to get back out onto Mary Ellen before you would, if you made that choice and you said, okay, I don't want to order here anymore and I want to get out, that's where the bailout opportunity would be.
Okay. And in that sort of situation, you still unfortunately would have to do a little bit of waiting, if I'm picturing the picture correct, until you're able to make it to that bailout. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. You'd have 2 options. You could go out the back before you got in there, and then, once you got in, you'd have to wait to that option, right?
Thank you.
Yep.
And the bailout's before the order board, right? This is Chris Torty.
Correct.
Yep, okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Huber. Is there anyone attending in the room tonight who'd like to speak in favor of this appeal? Anyone attending virtually who'd like to speak in favor of the appeal? Anyone here wishing to speak in opposition? Yes, sir?
Bill Reiser, the McDonald's franchisee at 2771 Lincoln Way East. Not knowing the concept that's proposed for this, I guess I'm just going to raise a concern. It may or may not be a concern depending on what kind of concept is going in, but I know that's not been disclosed. But as the property owner adjacent with a parking lot that is immediately next to their parking lot. I am concerned that if there is congestion, that people may choose to park in my parking lot, which at peak times obviously becomes rather full, and I don't have spaces to donate. That happened occasionally when, back when Pizza Hut was really a thriving business. The other concern I have is that the city seems to be looking at the metrics of how many tables will be in place as far as if parking is adequate. And again, I don't know the concept, but obviously at 80% drive-through, I'm guessing there may be people going in to get, sort of carry out to-go orders, and that will place additional pressure on parking. So it would be interesting, I guess, to know, what kind of breakdown of people might be going in just to get a to-go order. And so if that's happening in addition to people dining in, then it seems spaces may be, getting tight during peak hours. So that's my concern. I just don't want to have people parking because they're full or because they think it's too congested to go to their lot to go to mine.
Sure.
And hoping to avoid that situation.
Okay.
Mr. Reiser, when it was Pizza Hut, you did have people park over there?
It did happen at peak times, yeah. Honestly, that was so long ago, it's hard to recall
Yeah.
how frequent, but yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Reiser.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Is there anyone attending virtually who'd like to speak in opposition? Okay, Mr. Huber, you have the right to rebuttal. Is there anything you'd like to say regarding Mr. Reiser's concerns?
Sure, thanks. Appreciate the opportunity again. Pizza Hut obviously was a completely different model. Pizza Hut didn't have a drive-through opportunity, and people predominantly went in there to sit and eat as a dine-in establishment, which would cause a lot heavier demand on the parking issue. Again, currently, the concept we're talking about is 80% drive-through, so we're not anticipating that many people really staying. And then the 20% remaining is a combination to go and sit down. So, we feel pretty comfortable that, the size of the parties who would utilize the parking for dine-in be in excess of that 2 seats per car threshold, and the folks that would be going in for takeout, it's 3 minutes and then they're out, they're gone. So I think we don't anticipate that we'll have any issues with folks utilizing neighboring parking spaces.
Thank you, Mr. Huber.
I have one question for Mr. Huber. This is Chris Torty. Are you going to have designated pickup spots that take up a parking spot, or are you not having designated pickup?
Again, I would maybe defer that to our concept. He just said potentially 1 to 2, but they could be used for pickup. They wouldn't necessarily be designated exclusively for pickup.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board? Any comments?
This is Joel Dendu. I don't suppose you happen to know, you had average queue time for the drive-through. Do you happen to have average dine-in time?
Looks like 5 minutes probably for coming in and picking up. I don't know how long folks would sit and stay total if they came in and actually dined in at the table. But if they're coming in for pickup, they'd be in and out in 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Okay, I will close the public hearing on Appeal 21-12. I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I have some questions.
Oh, go right ahead.
This is Chris Torty. So what's on here is 26. And so can you explain the configuration at 26 versus 24? I'm a little confused. So if we go 26 parking spaces, what's on here, that changes the configuration, correct? Mr.
No,
Prince?
so 26 is what they're currently showing. The configuration would change based on engineering comments, but the fundamental number of spaces 26, they can get that with Mary Ellen and the parallel parking or not. If they remove the parallel parking and keep it two-way, then they have to reduce it to 22. They can't get that number to work. So it's all about the parallel spaces that are adjacent to kind of the front door. Thank you, Derek. In that area.
So 26 may not work in the long term for them, and 24 is a better opportunity for a configuration.
So it's 26 and 22, not
Or
26.
26 and 22.
And then in terms of configuration, we feel like the two-way gives more flexibility, is why, and they seem to be gravitating to that, but what they applied for is 26.
Okay.
So the only thing that you can act on this evening is 26. And then if they choose to, they could bring back to you 22. We just don't want the board to give them direction regarding, I feel like 26 is good, but 22 is too much. That kind of direction would be very helpful right now if you felt like that was an issue. Again, we're trying to encourage the maximum use of the property, and I understand Mr. Reiser's concern. If it is a problem over time, they do have the ability, not that I encourage fences between properties, but you can make it difficult. I believe there's also an elevation difference between where the Pizza Hut property is and the McDonald's parking is. Having frequented at McDonald's way too often, I'm familiar with it. And they have limited parking as well. I know frequently when the McDonald's is filled up, except for the back portion that's quite a bit away from the front door.
Sure.
So a couple of ways for us to proceed would be to have it as written or change it.
You cannot change it. So right now, it's been advertised at 26.
Okay.
You can approve it at 26. You could potentially arbitrarily say, no, only 28 would work, that type of thing, and have that discussion. We're not recommending any of that. But what you can't do is modify it to go lower because it was advertised at 26, not at 22.
I understand.
Okay. So if they choose 22,
They would have to come back
they have
before
to
you.
come back.
But what we don't want to do is to suggest that to them, have it come back and fail.
Yeah.
So you can't act on it this evening, but you can provide general direction, like I feel
Now I
like either
gotcha.
Okay.
solution works.
So can I ask the board if 22 is going to be an issue for anybody? Am I allowed to ask?
Yes, I would just respectfully ask if anybody has objections, knows right now that they are very concerned about 22, that they identify those concerns at this moment.
Okay,
Clearly, you would have a petition and a separate site plan and things presented to you. Either way, you're not bound by that in any way, but it's just helpful to have that input.
okay.
With the current knowledge that I have, I would feel uncomfortable with 22.
Uncomfortable, you said.
Uncomfortable.
Thank you. Larry?
I actually would be more inclined to accept 22 than 26 because of the congestion that the parallel parking creates with the two-way traffic going through there. So eliminating the parallel to me is, I feel more comfortable with that than keeping it at 26 with the limited space for the two-way traffic.
Chris?
Yeah, I wouldn't, I would be for 24, there's a lower amount to 22.
22. Charles? Okay. I agree with Larry. I would prefer that one-way traffic,
Thank you for that input, so we can.
so, okay. But what we are voting on tonight is the 26.
Correct.
Let me ask one more question. There is not an exit to the rear of the property to Mary Ellen Street?
There is.
Oh, there is.
It exists right
Oh,
now.
there, it is
Right.
there, so that, okay, that,
And that connects to McDonald's as well, so that.
okay, all right. So that alleviates some of the traffic.
It does.
Yeah, okay.
It does.
All right, that makes me feel better, too.
It does.
So,
Go ahead.
I'm just looking at this. It'd be easier to accept this, right? And then have a revision come through, is the way I'm reading it.
Right, so the only thing you can really act on is the 26 that has been
Yep.
requested.
Yeah.
Understood.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. If there's no more discussion, I'll close the public hearing on Appeal 21-12. And are we ready for a motion? Okay.
Clarification, the motion will be to accept it as it is at 26.
Correct.
Yes.
That's the only thing that you can do.
Yes.
If we decide not to accept the 26, then they will come back with 22. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I would recommend is, because the 22 is a higher standard to prove, the site design is actually governed by the Planning Commission, not regarding the board. The only item that you're considering this evening is the number of parking spaces, not